With the month of August officially in the books, we've had some updates to DC Dark Legion that warrant some changes to our tier list. Today we're going to be looking at the changes that I've made, and as always, I'll throw the tier list up on the screen so that you can follow along. Again, this tier list will be available on my Discord. It will also be posted on the official Discord as of the time of this video release. And I hope you'll share it with your leagues and all of your friends if you find it helpful. Now you'll notice there aren't too many changes that I've made since the last time we put this tier list out, but there are a few that we want to talk about. And you'll also notice that I've made a significant change to the layout of the tier list. In talking to some fellow content creators and also just from the experience of working with the Justice League of Discord tier list, I found that it's much more helpful to try to group all of the champions into tiers related to their class. So obviously, we're still showing you the same set of tiers, S, A plus, A, B, C, and D, but I'm just grouping them in a way that you can kind of see the similar champions right next to one another. And I think that makes for a much better way to provide this tier list to you visually, and just a better way for you to decide how to build and structure your teams. With that in mind, we're going to go through a couple of nuances here. I did go ahead and add a key to this tier list. I haven't done that in the past, trying to keep the aesthetic of this tier list fairly clean, but there are three things I think worth highlighting. So in addition to the new designation and the up and down arrows to indicate whether we've moved a champion up or down since the prior list, there are also three other things that you're going to be seeing. I don't know if I'll keep these icons or not going forward, but just kind of a placeholder at least for the September edition, and we'll see how things progress from here. But the first one is any champion that's designated with the two swords crossing is going to be a champion that will rank one tier higher in PvP and ship combat. So you've got champions like Deathstroke and Ra's al Ghul who are going to fit that designation. We have champions that have the little recycle icon or cycle icon. Those champions rank one tier higher in combat cycle, and you could probably argue that they rank one tier higher in other PvE combat modes as well. There is some nuance to that. There are some champions like Stargirl who are only going to rank higher in one specific day of combat cycle, but we'll get into that. And then the last thing is champions that can't be obtainable without spending, and we only have one of those right now, but it is quite significant, so it's worth calling that out. Now, one thing that gets lost in translation with these tier lists is there's not really a lot of information telling you why a champion is ranked a certain way. If you don't watch my video, you're not going to know why you should or shouldn't invest in one of these champions. And even if you watch these tier list videos, sometimes I don't always cover every single champion in every video. We used to do that. It takes a long time. You're not going to watch the whole thing. I want to make sure that if I'm making changes to these tier lists, we cover those changes in these videos and we talk a little bit about some of the nuances. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that you have an evergreen place to go in order to view a champion and see what I think about it at that very moment. And so I'd like to introduce publicly, I've put this out on the official Discord server and we've kind of been playing around with it, but I've been working for several months behind the scenes on a website that provides tier rankings. You're going to have sortable grids of your champions to look through. You can see how we have them ranked. You can see what classes they are. You can see them ranked by faction. You can see them ranked by the game modes that they're worth using in. And if you scroll over them, you're going to have tooltips that have a little bit of information. We're still working on that. A lot of this functionality is definitely in the works still, but you can click on a champion, and we'll do Superman here, and it's going to take you to a page. And again, these are not fully optimized yet, but we're working on it, where you're going to have a Quantum's take. So it's just kind of my basic explanation of like why you should or shouldn't invest in a champion and kind of some of the pitfalls that you can work around. So we're going to have that. I'll probably continue to update those as time goes on, as new champions come in. You're going to have the tag synergies here, and if you scroll over, you can see the full tag synergy. I think that's going to be really nice for people. I'm hoping this is optimized for mobile, so definitely give me some feedback there. And we're also going to have stuff like damage type, sources that you can find a champion. You're going to get the information on multiversal force upgrades, which stay tuned on that one because we're working on a full-fledged force calculator. We've got recommended legacy pieces. So these are kind of tied to the champion. We've got a legacy ranking or grid that you can look at as well. And then, of course, we have information on the basic abilities for the champion. So a lot of information that you can glean from coming here. I mentioned legacies. You can see all the legacy weapons ranked here from S down to D. And then we've got mementos, which not really going to help you with your gameplay, but it's fun to be able to see all the mementos in one place and kind of read their description. So we've added that in. We've got some tips and tricks, planning tools. Those sections are still being worked on. I just wanted to plug this really quickly because basically you're going to have access to a lot more information about these champions than just the tier list. What we've done is we've tried to integrate my tier rankings from my tier list into this grid so that you don't have to wait for me to put out my tier list video to find this information out. Although I'd love to have you come back every time we do this. With that out of the way, let's jump back into the tier list. So you'll see we talk through the key and like some of the items that I've added to kind of give you an idea of why we have champions ranked in certain places when there is a little bit of disagreement in the community. Let's talk through that a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time on all the individual champions. We've talked about why Nightwing, Sinestro, and Constantine are the best, I would say, damage dealer champions. And if you want more information on those champions, you can probably go back to one of the prior tier list videos and watch that. And if you watch kind of the first 10 minutes or so, you'll probably get a decent amount of that information. We've also talked about why Supergirl and Superman are so good in the game. They cover a wide range of game modes. They're able to put out a massive amount of damage if you have your full Superman family built. And I think both of these champions are S tier to stay for now. Obviously, we talked about Superman kind of being on that edge. And there is a chance that with power creep, he is going to fall down a little bit. But I still feel like Superman is an incredible champion for new players to build starting out. And so we're going to leave him in S tier for now. And I think we've spent time every single tier list talking about Green Lantern and why he is an S tier champion. We have moved him back and forth with A+. And part of that was an early feeling that we should suppress his ranking because of how much money it costs to get him. But at the end of the day, I've seen way too much evidence of what he's capable of at 5 red stars, and even at just yellow stars. I think he's incredibly viable and an amazing champion. So we're leaving him in S tier. We're obviously also leaving this caveat on his tier ranking that you can't obtain him without spending money on the game. There was a way to get 10 shards of him at global launch, but that's if you weren't a global launch player, then you're not going to have access to obtaining those shards. So we also have Starfire here, who's a more recent champion. If you're a newer player, it's going to take you a while to get to Starfire, but both of those S tier champions, and they're going to be there for quite a while. So I want to turn to a few champions that are much better in PvP game modes than they are anywhere else. That's not to say that they're not usable in those other game modes, and obviously if you choose to upgrade one of these champions, you're probably going to be using them in all game modes. Let's be honest, if you put together a team with Deathstroke on it, you're going to be trying to use that team everywhere you can. And they are, like, Deathstroke is a really good champion in Combat Cycle and Training Sim and all the other PvE game modes, but he's much better in PvP. His PvP ranking 100% is S tier, and that's why we've given him this designation. I think it's a simple and elegant way to track for situations where a champion is really, really good in one game mode and not quite as good in the others. Martian Manhunter is a champion I've definitely tried to rationalize getting into the S tier ranking. I just don't think he's quite there. The way his kit is written and the way he interacts with the 3 or the 2 other outsiders that we do have is quite interesting. We've seen a ton of really good viability from him in PvP game modes. And for that reason, we've given him the designation. I'm not going to put him into S tier because I do think he struggles in some of the other modes. And the last champion who's going to get that PvP game mode designation is going to be Ra's al Ghul, a champion that we started out at B tier. And honestly, I actually think he fits in at B tier in general, at least for now. I mean, obviously, we've got a long runway for global launch players and newer players to pull this champion and come up with ways to use him that justify putting him in a higher tier ranking. But he does struggle in a lot of the PvE game modes. He tends to be a champion that wants to be in a PvP lineup. And when he is there, he's really, really good. So, but even then, he does require kind of very specific team comps to make that happen. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this designation for raising the ranks of these PvP champions. Next, we're going to turn over to the combat cycle champions, and we'll start with Joker. Joker's a champion that has traditionally been in S tier for a very long time, and he is an incredible champion. I think he ends up being much better in combat cycle than anywhere else, but he does offer a lot of utility in other lineups. And with the new changes that just came out in the game a few days ago for Arkham's Most Wanted, he received a significant buff by virtue of the rest of his team being buffed. So you have Scarecrow, Ivy, and Two-Face, who all received buffs that are going to make your Arkham's Most Wanted team comps much better. And so I think for that reason, we got to give him this combat cycle designation, show him a little bit of love. In certain PvE game modes, Joker is going to be much better than anything else you can run. We've seen proof of teams that were able to do 1 billion damage in combat cycle using Joker and the poison debuff that he can put on enemies. We've talked about Captain Cold in several videos on this channel. I think he's a really, really good champion if you're going against a single target or maybe a smaller group of enemies and you want to take out a very specific target. Captain Cold's your guy. He's going to be incredible in Legion of Doom comps, especially if you want to cheese with Starfire's Starbolts in like the Realm of Fate for Legion of Doom. You can throw that on Captain Cold and he kind of becomes a pseudo healer for the teams. It's kind of interesting, but this is a champion that definitely is going to go up a tier for combat cycle, but just doesn't quite fit the mold to be in that tier for everything else. So love Captain Cold. Used to hate him. It's actually kind of funny. We've gone full circle on that. I'm just disappointed that Captain Cold still can't use the Cold Gun. Now, the last champion that gets this combat cycle upgrade designation is going to be Stargirl. And Stargirl only gets the designation because of the Drowned. In the Drowned, she's like A+ or even S tier because of the fact that she can remove debuffs from your team. Having that cleanse is really nice when you're going up against an enemy that can put a really nasty debuff on your team, and that debuff will eventually wipe you out if you're not able to deal with it. So having Stargirl on the team, while she's not going to help with your damage dealing, she will keep your team alive by being able to remove that debuff for you. For that reason, throwing this designation on her to put her into B tier for combat cycle, specifically for the Drowned, and that's it. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the champions that I've moved up and down in the rankings. Unfortunately, we're going to talk about our boy Crypto. It hurts me to do it, but I have to move him almost immediately back down from S tier to A+ tier. And I'm doing that specifically because of his mechanics for when he's on auto mode. When manual mode, Crypto is 100% S tier. He is, in my opinion, he might even be better than Hal Jordan Green Lantern for just being the best healer in the game in manual mode because you're able to control when his ult goes off. But in auto mode, and so this is going to affect all PvP modes, he just refuses to use his ultimate, and we've had the explanation from the community management team and from the devs. The reason why certain champions, I think Dr. Fate suffers from this as well, the reason why certain champions do this is they're kind of queuing up some of their basic abilities, and if they have anything queued up prior to their ultimate energy getting to 100%, they're going to do all of those abilities beforehand, and it has to finish the animations. So, I'm not sure whether I buy that explanation fully. I feel like it's probably just a way to keep him from being completely broken. But at any rate, I probably should put one of these designations on him for PvE. We'll think about maybe a different way to designate, the difference between PvE and PvP. I definitely don't want to make a second tier list for that, but we'll see what happens. Ultimately, what ends up happening is if you're running a Superman family team, Supergirl will ult before Krypto, and if that happens, it significantly reduces her damage dealt because you're trying to get that Krypton energy as high as possible. That's really what Krypto is for, is this Krypton energy engine. And if he's not doing that, then it's just a waste to even use him in your lineup. And by virtue of that, it's a waste to use Superman family. So in a lot of cases, Superman family just isn't going to beat out a similarly built Legion of Doom team for that reason. And that's probably enough to be said about Krypto. Next champion is going to be Zatanna. And listen, I love Zatanna. She's incredibly good with Justice League Dark. I think at higher investment levels, she's going to give you a ton of support, not just for Constantine, but she's also going to do a lot of damage herself. I think she just lacks from Superboy being introduced to the game, because if you don't spend a lot of money on the game, or you don't spend any money at all, you really have to make a decision on who you want to build. And I personally think that Superboy offers more utility as a standalone champion, as a support, than Zatanna does, just because of the way his kit is written. And for that reason, I've got to drop Zatanna down to A tier again. But again, I don't think that takes away from her usability, viability. I still think that Justice League Dark is an incredible team. And I also think that Zatanna is one of the best supports in the game as well. Two-Face is a champion that we last month just moved down to C tier, but because of the changes that they made to his kit and some of the other Arkham's Most Wanted kits, we're moving Two-Face back up to B tier. I think that he's definitely going to offer a lot of utility in Arkham's Most Wanted lineups, and I don't think that Arkham's Most Wanted is necessarily going to become meta because of the changes that have been made, but I do think we have to recognize that Two-Face is an incredible addition to a Joker lineup in a place like Combat Cycle to try to ramp his damage up. All right, so we talked about all the champions that have moved up and down on this version of the tier list. Let's talk about the newest addition to the tier list, and that's Talia al Ghul. I think we still need a little bit more testing to kind of see where she lands exactly. I've seen her do massive amounts of damage, and B tier might not be the best place for her to end up. She may go up a tier or two. But as I've mentioned before, I try to be careful not to over or undervalue a champion too much whenever they come into the tier list. And I do have Talia at 1 blue star. I'm not sure that's enough for me to make a full opinion on my own, but I've seen other people who have her built at very high levels, and definitely going to be talking to them a little bit in the coming weeks. If I do make an adjustment to Talia's ranking, I'll make sure to either update this tier list. I'll definitely be updating the website with any changes that we make. So, be on the lookout for that. Take a look at those things and refresh them as the month goes on. We're going to leave her at B tier. I do think that she's much better when she has her legacy weapon, which is a large investment. We've seen some pretty high numbers from her in modes like Combat Cycle, so I do see some utility there. The problem is the League of Assassins tag synergy is just not where it needs to be for like a full-on recommendation that team is worth building. So build at your own risk right now, and we'll try to cover those champions a little bit more in the future. We'll do a quick bonus round here. Somebody's probably already left a comment watching the video and let me know this, but I missed the Atom as one of the champions that's a rank higher in PvP game modes, and so we'll talk about him for just a second. I've spent some time talking about his kit and why he's a much better legendary now than he was initially. But that stun that you get on his ultimate is going to be incredibly beneficial to try to stall the other team. I've seen this work to great effect even in Grandmaster tier with a team that's not really that well built except for their Superman being 5 red stars. And I think Superman has a really, really good unique legacy weapon as well. It's very well upgraded. On that team, Atom does really well because the idea is to just keep the other team stun locked while Superman just goes to town. So don't sleep on Atom for PvP game modes. Everything else he's really just not that great in, so you kind of build at your own risk. You might get some use out of him in training sim. I've mentioned that before, but like I said, C tier champion, B tier if you're using him in very niche use cases. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you as always coming in to hang out with me while we go through the new tier list. Let me know in the comments below if you feel like we've got anything wrong this time. As always, I'm happy to hear explanations for why you would rank a certain champion a certain way. I think we're getting to a point where we're doing a lot better job with these tier rankings. Hippolyta was not included in the rankings this time. As I mentioned before, if a champion comes in towards the end of the month, it's going to be difficult for me to include that champion on that tier list. We will be doing a lot of experimentation with Hippolyta. I have her at 3 purple right now. I'm trying to get her into gold stars so that I can give you a much better assessment of what she's capable of. We do think that she's one of the best Guardians in the game from what we can tell. She's definitely Fate 2.0, and we'll see what she's made of over the next few weeks. As always, if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if not, I will see you in the next video.